Okay, so I'm trying to show here where these little edges are that need to be embossed. So there's one that goes all along the trailing edge. There's also one that goes in the corner where the aileron is. That piece will be folded and flat down to make an edge. I cut out where the little aileron bell cranks are going to go. And these pieces all have to be embossed. So from the inside, took a straight edge in the back end of my X-Acto and I put a line there. I know you can't see these very well, but they're there. Put a line all the way along where the tab is and a parallel one all the way along where the hinge line is for the surface of the wing. Now you take this piece and you sort of try to fold it so it makes sense. So I started by folding that piece down. It has to be a little right angle, makes a little triangle. I use sometimes a straight edge to sort of squash it and make sure it's flat. And then you start working on where the aileron piece will come in, where that flap is, that tab. You just have to sort of fold it twice. So you fold it back so that the edge is correct. So that's making it so the aileron hinge basically is right. And now I put a straight edge up against it so that it stays flat. And on your wife's dining room table, you come by with an X-Acto blade and you kind of fold up a little bit like this to get it started. So you're pushing against the straight edge. Don't use your wife's dining room table like I do. Once you get that set, you can end up with this nice flat piece just like so. Now remember, the innards on mine are balsa. Originally they're supposed to be cardboard, but I find balsa works better. That piece is a middle line I've drawn from the plan, so that centers right along that center section where the the seam is going to be. And the trailing edge down there has to butt up against that tab and that aileron side or edge that we made. So you can see I'm taking a fair amount of care to make sure it's pushed up against and that that's square. When you fold it over, you get a nice flat square piece. When you do this, you end up folding this down. That's going to fold together when you put glue on it, and you're going to end up making a part of the wing. Now, folding the leading edge is tricky. I used to actually emboss along the leading edge, but I haven't done that recently. What I've done is basically fold the paper over carefully like this, and in the next scene you'll see a little more, where I've taken the wood out, put that together, match up the trailing edges. There's no glue or anything. It's just you're getting everything so that it's nice and even on the ends, on the trailing edge, along the cutout there for the pilot to look out, and also the trailing edge there. And then you very carefully kind of coax that leading edge to be bent. Just very gentle pressure. That's what I'm doing there. Very light. I'm just trying to sort of suggest that it turns over. I don't want it to crinkle. I want it to just go over in sort of a natural curve. So now, for my own benefit, smarter people don't have to worry about it. Oh yeah, I forgot. On the leading edges, on the edges, I sanded those down to make them curved so there's less of a sort of a hard edge there, just like I did on some other parts that we've done before. So all the way around there and on the edges. Didn't do the trailing edge, didn't seem like it needed it. Plus I wanted a square edge to butt up against that aileron line. Now for me, I put T for top on these. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I'm trying to keep things organized because I have a bad time. That's the top of the wing with the checkerboard. So that means the T has to go in like that. So I put it up against there, and you see that I've put little marks, little tick marks around where the wing should go. So I test fitted it a couple times, and when I got to where I wanted it, I put those little marks. So now when I do commit it to glue, I should be able to just pop it in there. So I'm just pointing out where those little tick marks are, and there's one that you handily can't see. So making sure that center's done, that's where. Now, importantly, the other side, if you slide that in there and you line that sucker up in the midsection there, it should automatically line up down there, which it does. In other words, the angle of the balsa matches the angle of the aileron, and you want to make sure that's right, otherwise your wing is going to be all wonky. So put a little glue on the wood, and then I put a little glue on the tab that's going to fold over. As usual, you probably should use like a toothpick or something. I use way too much glue here. But pretend I did it the way you're supposed to. Now, just lining this thing up so the center is in, and then all those tick marks are lined up on the balsa and on the paper. And if I press down, I should end up with something that is dang close to being centered, and should give me a nice structure. It's important because that wood is going to help, because that's going to be where your V-struts go. They're going to plug into that. So you want something kind of substantial in there so that the wire from the V-struts will work. So I'm pressing these down, making sure they're good. Now I'm testing the other side again, just to make sure. Remember, this is all about testing, 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 and then committing to glue. Just to make dang sure you don't make any kind of mistakes. But again, this matches up really nice along there, and that's good. So now put some glue on there, just like I did before. Some glue on the other tab. I think this time I got smart and I put glue down, and then used my little bamboo skewer to put glue on the tab, which was a much better, more controlled. You don't slop it on quite so much. You should don't slop it on, as someone from the World War I website says. Someone's mother, I think, said that. So pop that guy in there, make sure the center is nice and lined up, make sure you got no seam essentially. And it turned out really well, by the way. When you turn it over, it looks pretty dang nice. Make sure the trailing edge is at that aileron, and you fold that tab over, and you push down on your inner structure, in my case my 30-second balsa, and you just let that thing go and dry. And it works, makes a nice substantial, flat, good wing the way it's supposed to be. Now it should have a real airfoil associated with it, but in this case it's a simple model and I kept it as is, and it really does look rather nice. So now I've already coaxed those leading edges over, remember, without embossing them, but they should be able to fold right down like so and fit beautifully. So add some glue to the very edges, not all the paper, just the edges, and a little bit on the wood. And you go ahead and you fold it down and you make dang sure it's lined up. If you do have any white parts that show over, you can just cut them off or sand them off. It's not the end of the world. The hardest part here, it's not difficult, but is to make sure that the edge there around the aileron actually looks good, because it's a little piece of paper right there. I'm making sure that the edge of the wing looks tapered and pretty rather than just a flat slab. But you should go through with your thumb and you make sure everything is exactly is nice and pinched and closed. There I'm making sure that vertical piece is in there where it's supposed to be. Had a little problem with it, but it worked. Now you just repeat. Same thing on the other side. Again, I wouldn't recommend putting on the glue in the edges with the bottle. I would recommend using a skewer of some kind. It's much more, you can do a much more careful job, precise job. So you just, making sure that piece is down, but you just fold it over, and again, make sure everything matches up, and then when it's matched up, you give it a little squeeze along there, and a little on the wood so that the paper doesn't buckle. And here you have it looking pretty good. Looks relatively good, straight, true. Making sure that things are, again, still lined up. I went around the edges with a little sanding, a little file, and rounded the edges to make sure they look good. Now at the center section on the top, there's a little part that didn't really glue, so I threw some of that white glue in, almost like spackling, and just sort of smeared it over and cleaned it off. Worked great. Dried solid and clear wonderfully. Now the ailerons, I hit them with a little bit of sanding block to flatten them, make sure they're going to be ready to receive the ailerons when they're done, which I don't show how to do, by the way, but the ailerons are even easier because there's no wood in them. It's just the paper that's folded. So you just kind of check this pup, make sure it's nice, make sure it's the way you want it, and then I couldn't help but look at it and sort of test fit, look how it's going to look, and man, it's starting to look like a Nieuport, and that wing is going to be straight and true. Looks beautiful.